I'm Shira, our daily Shabbos talk. We're here today at the beach in Ashkelon. You can see behind me the beautiful blue ocean, the blue skies, the beige sand, and it's very quiet, it's very peaceful. Very few people here this time of year. It's not winter, but it's not summer. Summer, it's packed. And my wife and I decided to take a little Erev Shabbat trip, get away from the house, to get some fresh air, a little electrolytes popping in the system, it helps everything. And when we drove up here, I had this thought about a statement of the sages that says that a person should look at the sea, the blue of the sea, and remember the sky, and the blue of the sky, and the blue of the techelet, the blue thread that we put on our garments, and the blue of the kisei kavod, which is an interesting discussion itself because, of course, the kisei kavod is a non-spiritual plane. It is the place of God's glory from which the souls of humanity are drawn. But in the description of Yechezkel, the prophet who saw the kisei kavod, he saw a blue flash of fire. So that blue of fire is related to the sky, which is related to the sea, which is related to the blue dye of the chilazon, the biblical snail, from which we would dye our techelet, one of the threads of the tzitzit. So why are the rabbis making this linking of blue? This blue to that blue, to that blue, to that blue. And it goes from a very physical thing, a non-kosher snail, all the way up to the throne of glory. What's happening? Why do the rabbis make these statements? Well, I believe they make the statement because they're inspired to do so. But then we could ask the question, well, why are they inspired to do so? And I think that they, with the wisdom given them by the Creator, understand that we will understand that this is a meditation device. And that color, all colors, have impact on the human spirit, that we are color-activated beings. And that when we see blue, we feel differently than when we see white. And when we see red, we feel differently than when we see yellow. And so on and so forth. I don't think this is new information for anybody out there. But again, what is this device, this meditation device? The rabbis are directing our consciousness from the simple snail and its blue dye to the ocean, to the sky, and to something beyond the physical realm altogether, the throne of glory, and the blue flash of fire that is emitted from this transcendental realm from which all souls are drawn. What's happening? What kind of ladder have we just traversed? Well, first of all these places are inside us as well as outside us. And this is incorporated through what we call the Sefirot, the 10 energy centers of the soul, beginning at the bottom of the tree with Malchut, kingship. And we have an ultralight guy flying by. I guess he wants to learn a little bit too. And so the blue at the base of the tree of life is connected to kingship. And we see this blue is used by most police forces in the world. Isn't that interesting? Why do police choose blue as their uniform color? Because it's an authority color. And we understand now why some of the royal robes in the House of Stuart in England and other places also use blue in the robes of coronation, etc. It's this color of authority. And Malchut in Kabbalah, kingship, of course, is the ultimate authority. So the color blue resonates authority. We also relate the Shabbat to the color blue because Shabbat is related to Malchut. But Shabbat is a time of rest. A Shabbat is a time of peace. A Shabbat is a time of contemplation, prayer, family, partaking of the day's work, partaking of the week's work. What's the connection to blue? Well, because during the week, God knows we're very busy and it's hard to focus and to spend the time we need to spend in order to develop that connection, that attachment to our higher soul, which is a spark of the Creator. So He knows during the week we're distracted. We're focused on other things. But on Shabbat, He says, I want you to focus on the spiritual. And when we give ourselves that time, we actually automatically engage the power of kingship. And that's why the rabbis say on Shabbat, every Jew is a king, whether he's rich or poor. Why? How could you say that? Every Jew is a king on Shabbat. Well, when you sit on your own table and you have a meal and you celebrate the Shabbat, you are the king of that little realm, your house, your family, etc. Now, what does it mean to be king? Well, does it mean that you get to tell everybody what to do? Is that what it's all about? I don't think it's all about that. But rather, the idea of being king is to be at the place where the life force comes into the world and it's received by the world. That the king is the one who gives commands to direct the country and the resources of the country into the people. And then all the people take those resources from the king and use them in their lives, and then they bring their produce back to the king. And they bring their gifts back to the king. So there's this circular flow of energy from Malchut into the world, and then from the world back into Malchut. And once that energy enters the Malchut, it's elevated through the tree of life back up to the infinite, which is beyond our true present understanding. But Malchut, kingship, is therefore symbolized on Shabbat. Because the king, he just sits, he listens, he hears, and he answers. So there's this level of, I want to call it passivity, but it's not really passive. It's simply recognizing one's place in the world. Shabbat gives you a place in the world. It gives you an address spiritually. It gives you a way to be king and not be a servant. Not be a servant to your phone or your job or your friends or anything except the Creator of everything. So Shabbat is that spiritual place where you get to be something more than your everyday self. Now, if we go back to this idea of the sages about this color of Shabbat, this blue, that's reflected on so many levels of creation. We've gone from the lowest level, a simple snail, all the way up to the Kisei Kavod. But each of them carries a trace, a spark, of this idea of kingship. Now, I asked myself a question, wait a minute, but on Shabbat we know the Kabbalah teaches us to wear white. Why wouldn't we wear blue on Shabbat if Shabbat is the color of blue? But rather, the idea of wearing white on Shabbat is that we've turned the blue to white. We've purified the Malchut into pure kindness. Because white is the color of the sphere of Chesed. The sphere of Chesed is in the right arm, the arm of giving. So the idea on Shabbat is that we take this power of kingship of blue and we elevate it to the power of giving, which is chesed. And we want to symbolize that even in the way we dress. So we wear white colors. And the white is a reflection of that purification of the physical into the spiritual. Of taking that heavy energy that's called authority, that's called police, that's called army, that's called kingship, and turning it into pure chesed. That ultimately we understand that all the laws that the Torah gives us are really chesed. Now this week I had an interesting meeting with an old friend who is not religious, and he's like, Avraham, how do you live this life with all of these rules and these laws? It's all about the rules, And I wanted to say, really, it's not all about the rules. The rules are there. The Torah and its laws are there in order to give us a framework of connection to God. How to sanctify ourselves in this physical realm. The focus is not the laws. The laws are practices that you learn in order to develop your focus on higher things. So that when I keep Shabbat, I'm not obsessed with the laws. I keep the laws. I try to learn the laws. But I'm thinking about Hashem most of the time. Now, of course, when you think about God's laws, you're thinking about His will. So there's a deep connection between those laws, that you don't separate the good from the evil on Shabbat, and you don't cook on Shabbat, and we don't drive on Shabbat, and we don't talk on the phone on Shabbat. All those laws are connected to a will, and people say, well, how do you know that? There was no cell phone when Moses brought this book down from heaven. And we say, no, but the rabbis are extractions of that, and they're given the authority. Why? Why do we give the rabbis that authority? Well, because they dedicate their lives to the book. It's pretty simple. And they learn the book, and they learn it till they believe, wow, this is really God's will. And if I want to be an extension of His will in the world, I need to keep those laws. And at a certain point, they become a person who can share those laws with others and adjudicate the Torah into the Jewish people. So Shabbat really is about this transformation of authority into kindness. And turning those laws, those things that seem to restrict us, and understand them that they don't restrict us. The laws actually transform us into people who have focus, purpose, meaning, and it's all flowing out of the Holy Shabbat. Now, in our Jewish meditation class that we're doing on Patreon, we're in the midst of the class. We've had 3 so far. They're all recorded for anybody who wants to join us. We're going to work more with the idea of color activation in meditation. We're going to try to use color as one of the stimulants of the psychic powers of the mind. Because color has that power. When you see a certain color, it has an impact on you. And so, but when you see a color in meditation, it takes on a whole new power frame. Because we've cleared out the physicality of our lens, and we're able to receive the essence of a color. You receive a much sharper, clearer, more powerful image, like you do in a dream, where things seem to be at a much more heightened state of perception in a dream. Well, that's because it's happening inside your head and not out in the physical world. And our lenses on the physical world are much less refined than the lenses, as we've said before, on the internal world, on the realm of thought and feeling within. What I like to call the inner theater. So we're working with these ideas in our meditation class, and I highly recommend it. And if you think it's not for you, or it's too far above you and it's out of your range, well, that's part of my job, is to bring it down to where we're all learning together. You know, we're all on the same escalator going up. And each person has a potential. And all the psychics and all the sages and all the rabbis and all the gurus understand this one thing. They understand this one thing, that every soul of every human being has the capacity to experience the presence of their Creator. We have to have that capacity because we're flowing out of it. So when we understand that, we all become part of an equal team, if you will.
Thank you so much. I'm listening to your Shira. It's great.
Thank you very much. We have some friends here on the Ashkelon beach. And so I wouldn't limit yourself. I wouldn't think it's too much for me. I think rather, when I began this path, I said, let me see what I can get. Let me see what I can receive. I don't need the whole thing. I just need enough for today, for now. And then tomorrow is another day. And the next day, and so on and so forth. And our vessel grows. Our ability to receive grows. And of course, with that, our ability to give grows. And so that's really, we're all part of this, and we're all obligated to learn as students. We're all really obligated to teach what we learn. So come visit us on Patreon. Check out some of our stuff on YouTube as well. Our YouTube channel has a lot of classes. There are different classes on different subjects for different people, because each person has their own path to Hashem. So have a great Shabbat. Take the time, look at the sky, look at the sea, look at the blue thread, and imagine that there is this lightning blue flash in heaven from which we're all drawn. Shabbat Shalom, and we'll see you next week on Facebook. All the best.